Hello, everybody, and welcome to another My Credit Guy episode of Making Credit Common Knowledge, where our main goal is really just to help you understand your credit and the important role it plays in life. Whether you want to build your credit score to qualify for a new home or maybe another important purchase, at the end of the day, we hope that what we are sharing with you is not only helpful to you, but we also encourage you to share what you learn with your kids, your friends, your family, coworkers, anyone really that is in your social circle, so that hopefully we can all kind of work together to start making credit more common knowledge. Today, we'll be answering some very common questions about disputes and what it means to have inaccurate information on your credit report. Stick around, and we will also be sharing our highest recommendation for catching inaccuracies on your report and one of the best ways to stay up to date with your credit history. Super important. But before we start talking about the disputing process, I want to take a second to introduce both myself and our guests. My name is Curtis. I am the social media manager here at My Credit Guy. And today we have with us April Robinson and Marcia Kripe to help us get a better look at the disputing process and to also answer any questions you have that go along with that. April, thank you so much for being here. I know you're very busy. We appreciate your time. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking,
That's
Kurt.
good to hear. Good to hear. Good to hear. Marcia, how are you doing?
Doing great. Busy, but good. It's beautiful outside today, so that's always a plus.
It is, the weather's getting nice. We're all three in Iowa here, Vinton, Iowa, where spring is kind of rolling in and shifting away from that crappy weather to the nice weather. So we're excited about that. April, do you want to take a second kind of just to explain to us what your background is with My Credit Guy, what your role is, more or less?
I've been with my credit guy since we opened our Vinton office 5 years ago. I hit my 5-year mark back in March, beginning of March. And then I am a senior dispute manager here at my credit guy. So my department handles the disputing questions, things like that.
Awesome. So you are kind of the person to be talking to then, as far as disputing goes, then you're kind of the head honcho. And Marcia, do you want to give us an explanation, kind of like what you've done? This is, I think, is this your second or third time back with us on one of our Wednesday webinars?
Yep, so this is my second time back. So I've been here like 2.5 years now. I'm a team lead, so I help out a bunch of coaches here, and I also train our coaches. So definitely lots of fun with the coaching side of things and get to learn all kinds of new experiences. April is a great resource, one I go to frequently with any questions I have. So great knowledge.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But I just got to pause really quick. Right before we hopped on this live, I remembered that April's daughter actually drew me this picture. We thought this was kind of cute. And not only did she color this picture for me, but she thought my name was a little bit weird, but she made sure to tell April that was okay. Isn't that right, April?
Yeah, she told me, she was asking me how to spell it, and I spelled it for her, and she told me that it was an odd name, but she liked it. She's
Well, I'm glad
5. She's 5.
she's 5. That's important to mention. I'm glad she
Yeah.
agrees. So,
Yeah.
all right. Well, let's kind of just roll into our topic here. Start kind of getting an idea of what exactly disputing is. When does it happen? So, April, if I were to ask you, what is disputing? When does it happen? Can you kind of give us just a brief explanation, a general explanation of what disputing even is to begin with?
Yeah, absolutely. So anytime that you recognize on your credit report that there may be some inaccuracies, any type of inaccuracy on your credit report, it could be anywhere from your name to an account that's reporting that you're not aware of. As a consumer, you have the right to go through and to dispute that account pertaining to the laws with the FCRA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act. So you would just need to contact the credit bureaus and let them know of this inaccuracy and request that they fix that.
Gotcha. So basically, I mean, so we all have a credit report. And that report is filled with our credit history, our borrowing history, essentially. And when there is information on there that is basically not right, we have the right to contact the, did you say the bureau or the creditor?
Yeah, the
Um,
credit bureaus, you have a right to contact either the creditor or the credit bureau to go ahead and request that item to get fixed. Sometimes it could just definitely be a hassle knowing which direction to go with that, what you need to provide to get those things corrected on your report. But definitely you have a right as a consumer anytime you recognize any inaccuracy to go back and request either to the creditor or the credit bureaus that that information is corrected.
Gotcha. Gotcha. That's good information to know. I read a statistic a couple of days ago that said 1 in 5 people in the United States actually do have an inaccurate item on their credit report. Do we see that? Is that pretty common with the clients that we see here at My Credit Guy?
Absolutely. Anytime that the majority of our clients, of course, are focusing on inaccurate accounts that are reporting for them, but like I said, it could go down to inaccuracies such as a name, and a name issue brought up can actually hold you back from a loan officer pulling that credit report to be able to even determine your credit worthiness. Something as
Gotcha.
simple like that can be a major hassle for you.
And I guess that kind of makes me curious, like why would an account report inaccurately, like, to begin with? How does that even happen? Do you know?
It could be a lot of things that do happen on the back end of things. It could be just miscommunication between the creditor and the credit bureaus. It could be poor record keeping of the creditor. The credit bureaus report the information that the creditor actually submits over to them. So, like I had a situation, for myself last summer to where my mortgage actually reported twice. So all of a sudden, as I'm monitoring my credit, I'm seeing this huge drop in my credit score, and I'm going, okay, so what's going on here? So I reached out, or after reviewing, of course, my report and recognizing that all of a sudden I have 2 mortgages on there that look identical, same amount, everything. And of course, I know I have just the one mortgage account. I reached out to the creditor to find out, like, hey, what's going on and why are you reporting this twice? And they were actually very quick with their resolution. Let me know that the information that they submitted to the credit bureau got submitted twice. So this was something that was common that happened for a large group of people. So they were getting that corrected. She told me to monitor my credit, make sure that within 2 weeks I should see that disappear. If it did not, then I needed to go back to them, dispute through them and through the 3 credit bureaus to get that duplicate account removed from the report.
Gotcha. Wow. That's crazy that something like that could even happen, I guess. You think that um, that's probably something that most people aren't even expecting, which is kind of why it's important to pay attention to your credit history, kind of understand what's on there. That's good information to be aware of and to keep track of. I know that some people, there's a couple different ways to dispute. If you're not using a company like My Credit Guy, there's online disputing, and then there's like regular disputing. Do you know a whole lot about the difference between those two? Could you talk about online disputing versus regular disputing, April?
I definitely do. A lot of companies now, they can offer easy ways for you to go ahead and dispute the negative items on your credit report. The thing that's tricky with those is that usually they're just really very generic. You get a drop down, you choose from that, you go ahead and submit those, you never see them again. So the problem with online disputing is not only are you focusing and dialing in on what exactly is inaccurate with that account, it can prohibit you from doing that by a generic drop down. It also does not give you that record that you went ahead and you reached out to the credit bureaus. So having that solid documentation, for legal reasons, where if you're not getting that resolution that you're looking for on an inaccurate account or an invalid account, um, that's where you need to have those items to go back. If it's a situation where you have to, reach out to an FCRA attorney who specializes in inaccuracies on the Fair Credit Reporting Act, you need to have that solid written documentation on that. So these online disputes, while they're handy, they're great. When you go ahead and you do that, you shoot that information off. You don't see or hear nothing again at times from the credit bureaus in regards to those. So
Ah,
definitely
so
having that
sorry.
solid documentation, letter documentation that you submitted those out, mailed them through snail mail is usually the most ideal way to get those through to the credit bureaus.
Gotcha. Marcia, you work with our clients on a day in, day out basis. Have a lot of our clients tried disputing things on their own? Is that something that you can talk about at all, or?
Absolutely. So even just this week, I had a client that said they have tried to dispute things on their own multiple times. And within the first round of disputes, we were able to get something removed. Now, I'm not saying that happens every time, but it just goes to show that there is a difference in how we dispute and making sure that we take that time to not just make it generic and really focus on trying to get inaccuracies removed off that report for them.
And that's, I mean, that's the goal, right? Is to get those inaccuracies removed, bring up the score so that people can kind of hit their goals and kind of get to that next step. So
Absolutely. One other thing I was going to point out too, is April mentioned the FCRA attorneys. She's absolutely 100% correct as far as making sure you have that documentation, because if you don't, it actually pushes that time frame out, because they're going to have to redo disputes on your, for you, so that they can have that documentation to show that they tried to get it fixed. That way, if it does end up going to legally, a court hearing and things like that, they have to have that physical documentation. So it definitely makes a big difference.
gotcha. That's a good thing to know. It kind of brings up something else that I'm kind of wondering about. So like, as far as what influences the outcome of a dispute, can the context of somebody's situation influence a dispute? Like if like a collection hits or something like that, is that something we can touch on, either Marcia or April?
I can definitely take that one. So yeah, the context of a situation could definitely come into play on that. Certain situations can come up that can be, straight violations of the FCRA, to where you do, you have that leg to stand on a dispute to where it truly is inaccurate. At times, also as well, it kind of goes into like late payments would be a great example. So a context of a situation would be with late payments. You've had this account open for 15 years. Just recently you didn't realize it, but you missed a payment. You're 30 days late on that payment. So in that situation, you definitely also have a right to reach out to that creditor to ask for a goodwill forgiveness for that specific late payment. Which is something that definitely we can help with too. Just to ask them for that forgiveness, giving them that explanation, the whys behind the situation. That definitely can help. You can also use those things in disputing, because what happens with disputing is when you do dispute something with the credit bureaus, that goes to the credit bureaus. The credit bureaus then contact the creditor with that information. And so that creditor can also reevaluate that account at that point in time. So, context of situations, explaining what happened, those are always really valuable tools in explaining why something could be inaccurate. Another thing is providing documentation on that to the credit bureaus. Anytime you have documentation proving an inaccuracy or a situation that you were put into, keep that documentation from a creditor. If you reached out about that late payment, they said they would go ahead and remove that. It doesn't get removed on the credit bureau level. You're going to want to forward that information along with your dispute, explaining the situation with that documentation to ask for that removal, to kind of just push that along. Sometimes creditors can take anywhere from 60 to 90 days to update things. We see things sometimes removed or deleted, at that 30-day mark a lot, but there are some creditors that do take that 60 to 90-day window. So just having documentation anytime you do dispute something on your credit report is a really valuable tool to helping move that along.
Definitely. Yeah. If there's a theme to be had here, as far as disputing goes, it's like documentation. That kind of seems to be one of the most important parts of actually kind of resolving an inaccurate account. So I know that another big topic is like there's kind of some buzz about like medical collections and disputing and I've heard that like medical collections are different or something like that. Is that true? Are medical collections different as far as like disputing goes? And How would somebody handle a medical collection if they were in that situation?
Well, with medical collections, it depends upon the FICO scoring algorithm on how they can figure into the scores, definitely on which one's being used. Otherwise, to an extent, a collection is a collection when it's reporting. The thing is that to keep in mind with collections, it's valuable for you to let me step back. So anytime that you have an account that's getting ready to go to collections, that according to the Fair Collections Debt Practices Act, they are supposed to contact you. Sorry about that. They're
No, you're
supposed to
good.
contact you within the first 30 days before they go ahead and report that account to your credit report. So one of the things where you can trip them up is a lot of times they're supposed to contact you. A lot of times the collection agencies don't. So other things is information when it's passed from an original creditor to a collection agency. Not always is that in for the correct information that they have to have according to that Fair Debt Collections Practices Act. There, I think I said it correct this time.
There you
They
go.
don't always have that information. So those are good things. So anytime you receive any notice in the mail where that collections letter does notify you, hey, this collection's getting ready to report. If we don't hear back from you, it's going to go on your credit report. You then in turn do have a right to go back to that company and ask for those documents. So you're just asking for what's called a debt validation of that, of, hey, we need to put on the brakes here. I need to make sure that this is my account, that it's going to be accurate. And it'll also give me a chance to see, is this something that I need to take care of before it reports to my credit?
That's good to know. That's good to know. A lot, Marcia, do we get a lot of clients that do have medical collections? Are those like super common? Or they're not very common? Do you see those a lot?
Yes, medical collections are very common as far as on people's credit. It seems to be probably I would say one of our top ones. Wouldn't you agree, April?
Yes, absolutely.
I think the hardest part is for medical collections and just knowing a lot of people will, and this kind of goes off topic a little bit, but they don't factor in so much when it comes to the home loan process. But the understanding of that is that's right, it doesn't factor into the home loan process, but as far as your scoring, it definitely has an impact on your score. And to help get your score to that point, we still need to focus on those depending on dates and things like that. But it's definitely something that we definitely still need to look at.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I do want to take a second here. We have a question from Patricia here, who left us a comment. She says, an issue that I have had is an erroneously reported item that I challenged and asked to be removed, but was only updated, in quotes, with the information that I provided. Is that even legal?
It would be dependent upon what the documents had said. So if it was a clear cut, like if she had 4 documents along with that to point out what was inaccurate on it, and they didn't have questions in regards to that, then in that way, it should have been removed if the documentation was clear cut. A lot of times the credit bureaus, don't want to sit there and dig through 15 pages of documentation, which I'm not saying she had that on there, but that's what they're looking for, is something that just clearly defines, hey, this was supposed to be removed, or that company acknowledged that they were reporting that inaccurately, or hey, we're going to delete this account from the 3 credit bureaus. So it's really going to come down to the clarity of that documentation that is set with that. Something also too is, contacting that creditor saying, hey, the documentation that I have is not clear. Can you please redefine that for me, and see what that creditor would be willing to do for you?
Gosh, I'm really glad that you brought that up, April, because that kind of makes me think that there might be a slight difference between like good documentation and maybe not quite as good documentation. And what I'm hearing you say is, in order to maybe like improve the quality of your documentation, or overall improve the chances of maybe getting that account removed, is to kind of have that documentation be concise or kind of get to the point, or is that kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I look at when a client sends over documentation is I'm looking at that documentation to say, okay, I'm looking for one, like a payment that was made. am I looking through 15 pages of a bank statement to try to focus on just where that one payment was made? So that's one thing that I look at, because I don't feel, yep, they're going to investigate that, but are they going to really, really look at that documentation and say, oh, hey, they really did make that late payment on page 6 of this 15-page statement? You know what I mean? So it's like when you're forwarding that documentation, you want to have it condensed. It wants to be just point blank to the point of what is happening there.
Gotcha. That's a really good tip. I think, yeah, not just any documentation will do. I mean, like it could, but I would recommend to anybody who is doing disputing to, or even asking us for help with disputing, to provide the documentation as April described, concise, clear cut, so that because the bureaus are like really, really busy. Am I right about that? Like they have a lot of things to go through. And so, I mean, I imagine that having that documentation easy to read, easy to understand is going to help you out in the long run.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So
Just being clear cut and to the point about what exactly you're looking for, and having that documentation to back that up.
good to know. Good to know. So then, so we have all these different situations, different scenarios where something could be reporting on somebody's credit reports inaccurately. What are some like proactive measures that somebody could take to kind of like know when something hits their report? Like how does somebody know when something is inaccurate on the report, April or Marcia?
One of the things that you want to be doing is actively monitoring your credit. It really doesn't matter who you kind of go with to monitor that. A lot of times we do kind of see in certain situations, you kind of get what you pay for, which there are some pretty ridiculously priced credit monitoring out there, but just like an average of the mill, do your research on it kind of thing, just to have some sort of a credit monitoring. We'd like to encourage, especially with our clients, to have that credit monitoring that allow us to look at a 3 bureau report, but even just having alerts set up is going to be really beneficial. So like in my case, if I had not, for the mortgage that reported twice, if I had not been watching my credit, I wouldn't have seen that. And had I gone in to like refinance, that definitely would have been like, whoa, wait a second. Everybody would have had to look at that. We would have had to stop, get that corrected, which would have then been a huge time delay. So just having a credit monitoring that alerts you to any new accounts, lets you know if something that's popped up, things like that is really beneficial. So you should always be paying attention to your credit, no matter if it's the time for you to go back to get a home loan, if you're looking at purchasing a car, any type of loan, just to know what you have sitting out there at all times is really, really great. So you kind of got to babysit the situation is what you really need to do, because while it may not be important to you right now, 5 years down the road, you could definitely go in to have credit pulled, and something that reported 5 years ago comes back to kind of bite you. So to avoid having those surprises and any delays, knowing what you're going into beforehand is really, really, really beneficial to your situation.
I just want to add, as coaches on our side of things, the Identity IQ credit monitoring that we have you recommend for our clients is amazing, because it allows the 3 bureau report once a month, so we can look at everything on that report, be able to see if anything's new, and kind of attack it right away so we know what's going on. It's a phone call saying, hey, do you know what this is? This just showed up, and then being able to figure out what we need to do from there. So definitely important to make sure you're monitoring it at all times.
I've heard, I want to touch on that really quick, Marcia, because I've heard that with credit monitoring in place, while our team is working on your credit, actually makes the job go like 10 times faster. Why is that the case?
Absolutely. So when we are at the point where our disputes are finishing up with the credit bureaus, we can go right into Identity IQ. Once those are finished, update that report and get you a review or a synopsis basically of everything that's going on right away, versus having to wait for the credit bureaus to send you results in the mail. Sometimes those can be quite lengthy and as far as waiting for those, and so it definitely speeds up the process. I would say within 2 months you're paying more the $20 a month, but it's well worth it as far as paying for more service. So definitely worth it.
definitely. And I think as with most things, you kind of get what you pay for. So
Absolutely.
Exactly.
that is yeah, yeah.
And just
Um,
to add on quickly to Marcia's thing is with the credit bureaus, they're required when you do dispute something to mail you the results of that investigation in the mail. A lot of times, what we saw even before COVID had happened is our clients don't specifically receive that for this reason, that reason, who knows? But either way, we see a lot of the times where the clients don't receive that information in the mail. So that's kind of where with credit monitoring is so beneficial, especially with identity IQ that allows us that clear picture at day 30. We can sit down, look at the three bureaus. It's right there in front of our faces. We're not having to wait for those credit bureaus to maybe not send that information for the client. And unfortunately, if the bureaus don't send that information, the client doesn't have that, we don't have access to that without credit monitoring. So we can only assume what happened during that. And at that point, we have to assume that there was no changes made to those accounts. So that's where it's going to, be ideal for a client to have that credit monitoring is because not only is it going to move them through the process smoother, it gives us that access to that report right away to go ahead and look at those differences between those accounts, see the progress that we've made. And, within, a couple days, you have your review, exactly where you're at instead of sitting and saying, okay, we're going to wait 10, 15 days for the bureaus to send you that information because we have to allow that time frame. It's jump in, review that information, compile the data, get that over to the client as soon as we possibly can.
Game changer. That's
Yeah,
awesome. That sounds like a night and day different experience as far as not only just like fixing your credit, but just understanding where you stand and just being on top of your credit history. And just as far as this conversation has gone, we can already kind of tell that that's something that is super super important. Just because like if you don't know what's going on, then your credit score could take a huge hit, and that's not what you're looking for. So those are all the questions I had. Do you guys have anything to like leave us with? Do you have any kind of just like tips to kind of or last words that you want to share with our audience before we sign off, or anything you want to repeat or emphasize before we sign off here?
I just make sure you're watching everything. And then if something pops up and you don't know, and you don't know how to look into it, definitely reach out because we're here to help in any way we can. Even if it's something that, we just need to say, hey, this is what you need to do. And you can, do that on your own. We would definitely do that. If it's something that we can help you with, and make it easier for you, we definitely will. So just reach out.
absolutely.
Amazing. April, what about you? What do you got for us before you leave?
Just make sure you're monitoring your credit. It really is, a super big buzzkill to think that you're going in when you found a house to, go ahead and get approved for that loan and something comes back from years ago to bite you that you didn't even know about. So, it's how many times have I talked to people about, hey, you may be 3 years out. Just make sure that you get your house in order before you go and you start looking for houses.
Good to know. Good to know. Well, I think there has been a whole lot of wisdom dropped here within the past 25 minutes, a lot to fit in 25 minutes, but you guys both hit on a lot of really good topics. I appreciate you both so much for being on here. And if you're watching this, we do want to always emphasize that if you do need help, please reach out to us. We would love to talk to you. And if you are thinking about building your credit or fixing your credit, I'm going to drop a link in the comments that you can go to request a free review with one of our credit specialists. And the link to that is mycreditguy.com/you-made-it. So with that, we are going to sign off here, and we appreciate everybody who joined us today. Thank you again to April. Thank you again to Marcia. You guys both did awesome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Kurt.
Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.
Bye.